it's not. I thought it might be sparser, more sparse. Not sure what that.
I got an email from Edith saying, I'd love to hear you sing, but it's just too much.
Oh, bless her
I
heart.
just
Yeah,
can't get out.
yeah. I can definitely understand.
Absolutely.
Okay. We enter this sanctuary to welcome Shabbat. Within these walls, we sit surrounded by numberless generations. Our ancestors built the synagogue as a visible sign of God's presence in their midst. Throughout our long history and our endless wanderings, it has endured, a beacon of truth, love, and justice for all humanity. Its presence guided our ancestors to lives of righteousness, holding up to them a vision of their truest selves. Now we, in our turn, come into this sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives. May we enter this place in peace. May holiness wrap around us as we cross its threshold. Weariness, doubt, the flaws within our human hearts, the harshness of the weak, let these drop away at the door. In the brightness of Shabbat, let peace settle upon us as we lift our hearts in prayer. Shabbat Shalom. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Samay DeWeese Cooper. As you can probably tell by looking around, Rabbi Zimmerman is not with us tonight. So Jenny and I are going to attempt to fill his shoes tonight. So I do want to welcome all of you to our services. I know we have several visitors here, and we're very glad always to have our visitors. We're very glad to have our congregants here as well. So want to welcome everyone who may be here in person, but also we have a lot on live stream as well. So thank you so much for joining us. So joining me on the bima tonight, as I mentioned, is Jenny Long, who's going to be singing very beautifully, and you'll be so thankful because my voice is not that beautiful. And then also our president, Robert Simon. So we welcome both of you. Thank you. Oh, that's why we have Jenny to drown Robert and me out. There are two versions of our Siddur or prayer book. If your version has two sets of numbers, whenever we say a number, we're going to be referring to the numbers in the bracket. If so, now, as we begin to welcome Shabbat, we're going to ask Ellen Rubinson to come and to light our Shabbat candles.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
And now please join us on page 138 for Lecha Dodi. And we will be singing the first, second, fifth, and ninth verses, right? Okay.
Yes.
Good deal. Okay. Thank you.
And on the last verse, it's our custom to stand and face the back as we welcome the Shabbat Queen. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat shala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'tzakor b'dibur echad, Hishmianu el ham yechad, Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, l'shem hu tiferet v'lithala. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechurven elcha, kishmianu el, sorry, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Hitorari, Kiva oreke midori, ori shir daberi, kavod Adonai alayik nigla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam l'simcha u'v'tatzola, tokemune am segula, boi sala boi kala. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela.
So before you sit down, I would like for you, while everyone's standing, turn around again and look at across the top of the chapel where we have now the new, or not new, the old stained glass windows from the old sanctuary have now been installed here thanks to the generosity of Judith Cohen. So we want to thank her, but just look how beautiful they look right now as the sun begins to set. So if you want to peek around during the service, I think that's perfectly all right. So, okay, so let's turn now to, you may be seated. Let's turn to page 140. And I would like to ask you all to join me in reading this psalm together. A psalm, a song for Shabbat. It is good to praise Adonai, to sing hymns to your name, O Most High, to proclaim your steadfast love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night. With a 10-stringed harp, with voice and lyre together, you have gladdened me by your deeds, Adonai. I shout for joy at your handiwork. How great are your works, Adonai, how very subtle your designs. A brute cannot know, a fool cannot understand this. The righteous bloom like a date palm, they thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai. They flourish in the courts of our God. In old age they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no wrong. And then join us for Hatzi Kaddish on page 144.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah Ve'omad yimerach yinutei ve'amnik malkutei V'kayekon uvyomekon uvkayede kol Beit Yisrael Bagala, bagala Uvisman karib ve'imaru amen Yehi shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olam le'omaya Yitbarach, Yitbarach v'yishtabach V'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal Shemei dikusha barichu Leila min kol birkata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata Damiram v'yama V'imeru Amen.
And across the page, on page 145, join me in reading in the middle paragraph, Teach me, O God. Teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer, on the mystery of a withered leaf, on the ripened fruit so fair, on the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to hope, to despair. Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night you renew your days. Lest my day be today as the one before, lest routine set my ways. And please rise now for the Baruch.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed.
Page 149. Please join me in reading in the middle paragraph. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over?
Baruch
Atah Adonai, Ha'ma'ariv Aravim. And then please join Jeannie as we sing on the top of page 150, Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat Olam, Bet Yisrael, Amchavta, Amchavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadta, Al kein Adonai לשכבנו ובקומנו נשיח בחוקיך. בדברות בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגי יומם ולילה, נגי יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל. לעולם ועד.
And you may be seated, and please join us at the top of page 154 for the V'ahavta.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על עבדיך, ושינתם לידיך ותפארתם בם, ושבתך ויבטך ובטחתך בדרך, ושבתך ובפניך, ושרתם לעולמות עבדך, והיו מטפלות עינותיך, ובטחתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, ותהייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתיכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
And please join me on page 157, page 157 at the top. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורת ההילות עושה פלא, נורת ההילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע הים לפני משה ומרים. זה לי, ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Gaal Yisrael. Page 160.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, להעמידנו שומרנו, לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו ושלום לעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ושמור צאתנו עבודנו לחיים ושלום מעתה ועד עולם. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו ושלום לעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו ושלום לעמידנו שומרנו לחיים.
Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, va'al kol amo Yisrael va'al Yerushalayim. And now please join us on page 164. Please rise as we say tefillah.
Adonai sefer tiftach ufia ki tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibur v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Toker Kastei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevi Gula Livnei V'Nehem, Ma'an Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Hozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mekotel HaKol Atarav LaHoshia, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berakamim Ravim, Somech Noflim Velokei Holim, Umatzir Asurim, Umkaye Munato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umidomelach, Memetnir Umchaye, Umatzmiak Yeshua, V'ne'eman atala harot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Makaye hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'kol yom haluka selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
So please continue your prayers in silence, either in Hebrew and English, starting or going through page 180, either the words on the page or the words in your heart, and you may be seated when you've completed your prayers.
Say shalom, shalom bimromav, Uya say shalom aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen. Ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen.
So this week, we reached the last two parshiot of the book of Numbers, or Bamidbar. The double portion, Matot Maseh. Oh, you know what? I did. Okay, let me start over. Sorry. Yes, we had one more thing we were supposed to do, and I got ahead of myself. Even I had it highlighted in red, so I would remember, but a little bit nervous up here, I guess. So let's start off, before we do our Devar Torah, let's start off and let's remember those in our community who are sick or ill. I'll read the names of the ones on our list, and then when we get through, if you have any others that you would like to add, we can add those. Sharna Blumberg, Charlotte Fiwas, Allison Getz, Christopher Long, Judy Cohen, Robert Klein, Adalis Rivera, Anita Kabudi, Jeannie Rosenblum, William Westerman, Ann Westerman, Lisa Bond, Barbara Leffer, Karen Silverberg, Karen Kaplan, Susie Kornbleet, Max Simonik, Harry Labovitz, Carol Ruth Brooks Saylor Alkek, Susan Flappin, Suzanne Slatkin, Peter Levy, Judy B. Greenman, Benjamin Rosser. Anyone else that you would like for us to remember? Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. It's Conti. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So now it's time for our Mishaberik.
Mishaberak avotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov. Mishaberak imotenu, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, veRachel. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well. Bless us with the power of your healing. Bless us with the power of your love. May we come to be with understanding and strengthened by the power of your love. Mishaberak avotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov. Mishaberak imotenu, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, veRachel. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well.
Okay, let's take two. This week, we are not going to read from the Torah, but we are going to discuss the parashah this week. And so this week, we reached the last two parshiot in the book of Bamidbar, or Numbers. The double portion, Matot Maseh. We will focus on Maseh, which means journeys. Essentially, this is the last narrative of the journey of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt to freedom in the promised land of Israel. Although the book of Devarim concludes with the Torah, with Moses' final speech to the people, Parsha Maseh completes the chronicle of their trek. They are now literally standing across the river from their promised homeland. Chapter 33 of Numbers, which is the first chapter of our parashah, begins with 49 verses, which basically name each of the 42 places where the Israelites set up camp along the way. Now, at first, I'm going to be honest, you probably are wondering, why would you choose this? Because it seems like that would be kind of a dull passage, one that, truthfully, for me, I would probably skim over and just read it very quickly, but there are some very important lessons that I hope we can learn from here. So I would like to share those with you tonight. Have you ever wondered why Pharaoh allowed the Jews to leave Egypt, but then just a day or two later decided to go after them? That part of the story kind of puzzled me. But verses 3 and 4 of chapter 33 tell us that the Israelites marched out defiantly because the Egyptians were preoccupied with burying their dead. Now it makes sense. Pharaoh and all his country were in shock from having lost so many people that their slaves were able to just walk away in plain sight. There was an opportunity to leave, and the Jews took advantage of that small window of Egyptian distraction. I think we can learn a lesson from our ancestors. So lesson 1 out of this passage is when the opportunity presents itself, we need to expand our horizons. We need to step out of our comfort zone and move forward. So prior to preparing for this talk, I really had kind of imagined the Israelites being constantly on the move during their 40 years in the wilderness. Maybe a day here or a week there, but mostly just roaming around in the desert. But according to Rashi, if you disregard their travels during the first year and during the last year, then there were really only about 20 different stations where they camped in those middle years. There were times they stayed in the same location for years at a time. And this is very different from what I had imagined, but as I think about it, it really makes sense. When we're constantly moving, it's difficult to process our thoughts, and it's difficult to internalize the lessons we are learning. These former slaves had a lot to process with their newfound freedom, including just learning to trust God. As the Israelites were learning, they had to take time to pause and recharge. Both the dwelling and the moving are part of the growth process that helped transform Egyptian slaves into the nation of Israel. So lesson number 2, we too need to take time to slow down, rest, and recharge on our journey. The Israelites who were ready to cross the promised land, apart from Joshua and Caleb, were pretty much under 50 years old. Think about it. When the spies brought back the negative report, God promised that none of the adults would enter the promised land. Now that was 38 years prior to the event we're talking about tonight. So if you add 13, which is the bar mitzvah age, that means that all of these people were probably under 51 years old. So why is that significant? Because if you read this list of these 49 verses and these 42 stops, you will see that it's just the names, for the most part, there's a few in there that are exceptions, but for the most part, it's just the names of the place without giving any details of the events that occurred. They moved on from Ramses and camped at Sukkot. They moved on from Sukkot and camped at Etam. They moved on from Etam, you get the picture. But many of these places had important events tied to them, like the mention of the wilderness of Sin, where the manna first appeared, and Rephidim, where the Israelites complained about the lack of water and Moses struck the rock. So a midrash found in Numbers Rabbah states that God told Moses to write down all the places through which Israel journeyed to remind them of all the miracles God performed to them. The people were so familiar with the story that just the name of the place would remind them of the event. So how would the people who were so young at the time when these events occurred, how would they know what happened there? It must have been through the constant retelling of these stories through the years by Moses and their parents. It is like rewatching a favorite movie over and over to the point where you know exactly what comes next. This retelling of our collective story is so important in Judaism. This is why we read the Torah over and over each year. Why at Purim we're commanded to read the Megillah, and at Pesach we're commanded to retell the story of our exodus from Egypt. Our third lesson is this: retell our story over and over until just one short phrase will remind us and our children of the miracles that God performed. In his book, Judaism's Life-Changing Ideas, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory states that the narrative in Maaseh teaches us, quote, "Life is a journey, not a destination. We should constantly set ourselves new challenges that take us out of our comfort zone. Life is growth," end quote. So tonight I challenge each of us to expand our horizons, get out of your comfort zone when the opportunity presents itself, but also take time to rest and recharge along the way, and keep retelling the story to keep the memory fresh for future generations. Life is a journey, not a just destination. Shabbat Shalom.
Lach to a place that I will show you. Lech lecha to a place you do not know. Lach on your journey I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing, Lach, Lach, and I will make your name great. Lech lecha, and all shall praise your name. Lach, on the journey I will bless you. V'simchat chayim, l'simchat chayim, l'simchat chayim, l'chilach. You shall be a blessing, you shall be a blessing, you shall be a blessing, l'chilach.
Thank you. Okay, so now let's turn to page 586, and please rise and join us in Aleinu.
Aleinu לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצון, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני ומלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד.
Please join me at the top of page let me get to the mic. They told me I have to, even if you can hear me, other people may not. So let's start again. Please join me at the top of page 595, and we're going to do reading number 6 together, please. And you may be seated. Sorry, you may be seated. It is hard to sing of oneness when the world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our lives have gone, and naught but memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find that what each of us alone must now become. Yet no one is really alone, for those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of their loss. For each of us, it's worth the life of the whole world. In each one is the breath of the ultimate one. In affirming the one, we affirm the worth of each one whose life now ended, brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone, and every life finds purpose. So tonight, before we say Mourner's Kaddish, I will read the names. I do want to just mention that Karen Stinsler Delavan passed away this week. Their services are on Sunday, and so she's the sister of Van Stinsler and the daughter of Yvette Kovic. So our sympathies to that family. Tonight, we're also in the period of Shloshim for Hannah Friedman Rabinowitz, Freda Eisenberg, David Felder, Sandra Fried, Ben Rubin. And then as I read the names of our yard sites, it is our custom that if you choose to, then please rise when we call the name of the person that you are remembering, so that we can know that you are here as a mourner. Helene Baginski, Lorraine K. Berenson, Matilda Rosenbaum-Karb, Elizabeth Finkel, William Friedman, Yael Glazer, David Donk Gordon, Louis Gordon, Sadie Grabstall, Bertha Harris, Irene Jacobs, Lena Klar, Anita Klein, Patricia Korenvase, Ben Label, Katie Merfeld, Donna Miller, Yetta G. Parker, Rose Raphael, Charles Lee Richards, Esther Rosenthal, Samuel Rubinton, Frederick Slinger, Sally Lynn Schur, Milton Sylvan Simon, Louis Snellgrove, Rose Tiras, William E. Weinschenker, Edwin Wittenberg, Mary Sussner Yentis, Erna Leseles Zintner. Any others that we're remembering tonight? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so we're going to ask all the congregation, please rise in support for our mourners. Mourner's Kaddish on page 598. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah Ba'alma Divra Kirute v'amlik Malkute v'chayekon uv'yekon uv'kaye de Kope Israel Ba'agala Bisman Kari v'emru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mavorak Le'olam Lamei Olamaya Yit Barak v'yishtabak v'yit Pa'ar v'yit Roman v'yit Naseh v'yit Hadar v'yit Taleh v'yit Allah Shemei Kudasha Bariku Le'ela Mikor Brikata v'shirata Tush Bekata v'nekamata Da'amiram v'yama v'yemru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'akol Yisrael v'yemru Amen. Osei Shalom b'mromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'akol Yisrael v'yemru Amen. So before we close this, please be seated. Sorry. I would just have y'all stand up for a long time. No, we're not going to do that. Okay. Before we close this evening, I do want to thank each of you for giving me the opportunity to spend this evening with you and to share with you tonight. If you've not yet viewed the newly hung stained glass, please be sure and do so. Just want to make sure you know. We also want to thank Jeff Keitzer for helping with our streaming this evening. Also, thanks to Patty and Amy in our office, our custodial staff for always keeping our building beautiful, and to our greeters, Mark Cooper and Loretta Feinberg. Thank you for your service. Robert, thank you so much for all the work you do in leading our temple. And thanks to Jeannie for her beautiful singing, which made the service so much more beautiful tonight. So we sure appreciate that. So now we are going to do our Kiddush and our Hamotzi before our closing song. And Conti, I think, is the only kid here, but she's already promised me. Y'all don't know this, but she was my support system back there, that every time I looked her way, she gave me a bright smile to keep us confident as we went through. So, page 123, please join us in the Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'rantzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahavat v'ratzon himtilanu. Zikaron lamahaseh bereshit, ki hu yom tekilah lamikra kodesh, zeker litziat Mitzrayim, ki vanu v'charta, yotanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat Shika be'ahavat uvratzon kinkaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai b'kadesh haShabbat. Amen. Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And Jenny's going to lead us in our closing song.
Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Haolam Omed. Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Haolam Omed. Al HaTorah ve'al Avodah ve'al Gemilut Chasadim. Al HaTorah ve'al Avodah ve'al Gemilut Chasadim. Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Haolam Omed.
Shabbat Shalom.
Wonderful.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
That was awesome.
Oh,
Shabbat
thank you.
shalom.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.